time this morning to listen to our online preview. My name is Kay Morris from Start IIX. I will run through the itinerary quickly. I will give brief introduction of Start IIX. Then we will have Dr. Ann Marie Sidhu, the speaker, to speak on the topic Starting Your ESG Journey with GRI. Then we have Q&A session for 30 minutes. You can type your questions at the Q&A chat or ask directly during the session, and we will get Dr. Ann Marie and Mr. Pratap from ESGRight to reply to your questions. Last but not least, we will have a photo taking session before we end. A brief introduction of our company, Start IIX. We are the business ecosystem curator and operator for Menara Jayland. We are tasked to run education and entrepreneurship programs at our location. We cover innovation and sustainability learning and provide impact solutions via our entrepreneurship programs. I am the ambassador for Globalized Business School based out of Silicon Valley, and Start IIX is the Malaysian partner for Fraunhofer IEM, a research institute from Germany covering the digital learning. This is our first ESG program with our partner, ESGRight. They are the certified training partner for GRI Institute. A brief background of the speaker. Dr. Ann Marie is an associate director with ESG Academy. Her experience predominantly from the Big Four. Then she moved to academia, teaching universities in the UK, Malaysia, and Australia. She has a PhD in sustainability accounting from UK and Masters in Environmental and Business Management from Australia. I will now call upon Dr. Ann Marie to take the session. Thank you and enjoy the session. Dr. Ann, you can now
Thank you, Kate. Yes. Yeah, just let me share my slides. I hope everybody can see these slides. Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending. Of people who are listening in. I have geared this talk towards SMEs primarily, but of course we have PLCs as well as government agencies here, but of course SMEs are very important to our economy, so I think it's good that we look more closely at them. So without further ado, as you know, my name is Dr. Ann Marie Sidhu. My colleague, Mr. Pratap, will also be helping to answer questions. He is the principal consultant of the Academy of ESG and Sustainability, Sindhir and Bahad, but we refer to ourselves as ESGRight. Okay, so before we get into the short talk, I would like to do a poll to see, to gauge the crowd and see, what your responses might be to these three questions. You have on the screen there a QR code. Perhaps you could use your mobile and scan that QR code, and that will bring you into the poll that we have. And I will be switching between different screens, so bear with me while I do that. So just very quickly, the questions are: question one, what would you say is your competency level in ESG sustainability matters? Question two, has your company started on its ESG sustainability journey? And question three, who do you think is the main driver of sustainability and ESG issues in your organization? So I'm hoping that you've already got your phone out and that you've scanned that code. So I'm going to switch over to the Slido poll place and start the poll. Okay, so it's open. Question one is now open for you to start answering. We'll just wait for the system. Those 4 people, I'll just wait for some more people to answer. quite a variety of answers here. Okay, so quite a mixed bag here. It keeps changing, but some people don't really know. Okay, it's still changing. 14 people have answered. I'm going to close this shortly, otherwise this will take a long time. Okay, so 14 people have answered. So 57% of the audience really know nothing about ESG, very new to it, whereas 43% know something about it. Okay, the next question. So I'll stop that poll. The next question was, has your company started on its ESG journey? So this is now open. Just waiting for sustainability and ESG agenda in your organization. Who do you think should be the one that's doing? Okay, so it's sort of overwhelming the board of directors. Be driving it. Okay, thank you. I think I'm going to stop it there. Thank you for participating. We don't have so much time, so I won't allow, I will close the poll and we will proceed with the talk. Thank you. So just to summarize, you can see that there's quite a mixed bag in terms of first of all, who should be driving the ESG agenda, where companies are. Some companies have started, some companies have just started, some have already been doing it, and other. I suppose it depends on whether you are a very large company or an SME. So let's 50% of you said you knew nothing about this area. I guess this is a good place to start. Why sustainability? Well, sustainability is nothing new. It's been around for decades. In fact, since the 1940s and 1950s, we've had environmental movements and so on. But this started really taking on force in the last few decades. And we can see here in 2009, there was research done in Sweden by the Stockholm Resilience Center, and they were looking at this idea of a safe operating space. In other words, you know, what planetary boundaries are going to be exceeded now and in the future that create an unsafe space for mankind? In other words, are we going to destroy ourselves with exceeding these planetary boundaries? And we can already see that climate change is one of the hot topics at the moment, but there are other planetary boundaries that are being breached as well. And we can see, for example, this whole area of novel entities is talking primarily about plastics getting into our systems, even into our food systems, land change, changing land from forests and peat land into agricultural land. Biosphere integrity is talking about biodiversity loss and extinction of flora and fauna and so on. So we haven't really been taking care of the earth, basically. And in 1987, there was a very important report which actually talked about this concept of sustainable development, and the definition that the Brundtland report, which was also called our Common Future Report, which was produced by the WCED, which is the World Commission for the Environment and Development, stated that development should be development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So yes, we need development. We need to grow our economies. We need to alleviate poverty, for example, and we can only do that through growth, through increasing our GDP. But what kind of development is it? It should be sustainable development. In other words, we shouldn't be destroying the planet at the expense of economic growth. And this leads on to looking at society. As we breach planetary boundaries, which is what we've been doing, it's going to have an impact on all of these areas in society as well. You know, our water sources, our food supply, our food security, our health. And then, of course, there are other issues related to resilience, the use of energy, our jobs, for example, social equity and gender equality. So the planetary boundaries, as you can see here, are very much linked to our society and how mankind lives within the planetary boundaries. So you might sit there and say, well, what has this got to do with me? I'm in business. I mean, this has got really nothing to do with me. Let the supranational organizations deal with this. But it does have something to do with you who is in business, because business makes up more than 55%. In fact, business controls more than 55% of the world economy. It's not governments. Okay, so when we talk about business, you can see all of this is going to have an impact on business as well. And we can already probably see this happening, supply chain disruptions, raw material scarcity, and of course, governments are looking at this more closely and starting to regulate. So that's going to increase costs. Now, if you're sitting as an SME, you may say, well, it's not going to touch me because the governments are only regulating the PLCs and so on. But it is going to have an impact on you, and we're going to look at that later. And of course, if we want to do right by the planet, for example, reduce our emissions, reduce waste and so on, we may have to come up with new technologies, which is already happening, such as carbon capture and storage and so on, in order to change having an impact on us as a country and also as individuals. You see the flooding in 2021, it caused so much damage to businesses. You can see here, this is from the Department of Statistics Malaysia, where 6.1 billion of damage was done just in one flooding session. And you can see it affected business premises, different industry sectors, agricultural sector, manufacturing sector. So, we cannot run away from this. And we can also see research that has been done by UUM here in Malaysia and Huddersfield University, looking at SMEs and the damage done by climate change disasters between 2011 and 2016. And you can see, the impact of flooding and the haze and heat waves. And you can see this is the feedback from the SMEs. Now, this was done on the database of SME Corp. 1,200 companies were surveyed. And you can see they said that, their sales, their profits were impacted, their assets were impacted in terms of damage to property, damage to stocks, impact on the employees, you're not turning up for work, and even employees leaving the business because they were worried about the future of their jobs and so on. So this is a reality. And we know this is the current landscape. So what have companies been doing about this? So there was a report produced by the UN Global Compact looking at companies in Malaysia, and it was looking at quite a variety of companies, not just SMEs, and you can see it here. These are the companies that were surveyed, 260. A large proportion of those were SMEs and MSMEs of different industry sectors. And the responses, based on the responses, we can see 87% of them had no commitment towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Environment. And that's quite worrying considering the fact that we're already breaching our planetary boundaries. It said here that 40% of the 261 companies think that the environment-related practices are not relevant, involved in environmental management, and they've already integrated it into their systems. But this is 40% of those 260 surveyed. And in terms of how much money they set aside for this, you can see here that 45% of them did not allocate a budget for their sustainability initiative. So this is research and quite worrying. Now, of course, the one thing I would qualify this with is saying this time of COVID. Here, the backbone of the Malaysian economy. And in fact, they contribute something like 47% to the Malaysian gross domestic product, and they employ 50% of our labor force here in Malaysia. So we want SMEs to succeed in the foreseeable future. And if we think about ESG in the context of SMEs, we can see that there are many issues and challenges for them. And at the moment, there are push factors in place that are actually pushing them to consider ESG and integrating sustainability into their business practices. And you can see here what those push factors are. So first of all, it's the consumers. Consumers are becoming more aware of sustainability and the value of it. Many of them are very concerned about climate change. And we can see here, even some of the consumers are beginning to say, yes, we're willing to pay more for the products if they are sustainable products. In terms of corporates, many SMEs are part of the supply chain of the large MNCs and PLCs, and they're going to be sourcing for low carbon, raw materials. They're going to be looking more closely at the environmental issues and forced labor practices and so on in their supply chain. So there will be a push in that direction as well. Investors are also more interested in responsible investing. So they're going to be looking at ESG. For example, here you can see government-linked companies in Malaysia are taking up the principles of responsible investment, which is a UN-supported network that promotes sustainable development and sustainability principles in investing. And then, of course, on a national level here, Malaysia has our 12th Malaysian Plan, which is aligned with the UN SDGs and is looking at areas such as low carbon mobility, looking at, the national green standards, the government offices and ministries having green procurement. And if you go into the 12th Malaysia Plan, you can see we look at the issue of the circular economy. So very much geared towards implementing sustainable development practices. And of course, a new addition here based on some of the recent news where some of our PLCs got into trouble with the Customs and Border Protection in the US with alleged forced labor. Where their products were not accepted into the United States. So now we've come up with a Malaysian National Action Plan to eliminate forced labor, hopefully by 2025. Okay, but one of the major push factors for SMEs is coming from outside the country. And you can see here some developments in the US, the EU, and if you look at countries like Singapore as well that are on the ESG agenda, Japan and so on, which are some of the major export partners for Malaysia. And you can see here the US Customs and Border Protections they've already put sanctions on some of our companies. In fact, at the moment, plantation sector as well as the rubber glove manufacturing sector have had issues, and at the moment 6 companies are still dealing with the US Customs and Borders Protection on this particular area. They haven't yet got their products to get into the country. In the EU, there are many things are happening in the EU. There's directives coming left, right, and centre. I would say one of them is the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, which is going to start this year, 2023, but it's only recording. By 2026, they will start charging companies who are not accounting for their carbon emissions so that there will be a level playing field for companies in the EU with Diligence Directive, which is asking European companies to look at their supply chains and ensure that environmental issues and human rights issues are taken into consideration. So that was going to have an impact on SMEs that are exporting to these countries. And then, of course, finally, financing. We can see recently Bank Negara has come up with their low carbon transition facility to help SMEs. The majority of the banks are involved in this, where you can get loans at 5% interest rates up to 10 years. So banks are also doing due diligence when they hand out loans to see whether ESG factors are taken into consideration when you're applying for the loan, to make sure that you are on this. Because ESG, it's not just about saving the planet and saving trees and so all this kind of thing. ESG creates risks for companies, so and they can be translated often into financial risks as well. So obviously, if I'm a bank lending money, I'm going to have to look at these factors as well. But of course, having looked at that, these are the push factors. What about the challenges that are faced by SMEs? And you can see here, this is based on a report by the UN Global Compact for Malaysia and Brunei. You can see lack of knowledge and understanding is one of the major areas. And this is why you're sitting in this webinar, because we're telling you, you need to get training. You need to have sustainability champions in your organization who are trained in this area. Of course, the other major challenge is we've just come out of COVID. So, companies have suffered in terms of their bottom line. So sometimes the focus is on that, trying to, grow revenue, trying to grow profits and so on. So ESG is just seen as something else that has to be done that's going to cost money. Lack of talent, another area, because of high turnover rates, employee turnover rates. And of course, if you train somebody in this area, you don't want to lose them. Another problem is a lack of corporate supply chain support. So all these big companies, PLCs and MNCs, and the European exporters and so on, or importers, may be looking for you to have all of these ESG, capabilities and so on, but then they need to be providing some sort of support. And generally, based on research here in Malaysia, most of the PLCs have a soft touch approach. In other words, they're quite, they will help and so on. But a report done by Standard Chartered just last year, it said that 78% of the large companies say that they will move on to somebody else if the SMEs don't get into this area. And then, of course, one of the major challenges is that, to get SMEs to look at ESG and integrate sustainability practices is, of course, lack of regulatory pressure. I mean, if there's no law saying you have to do this, then why do it? Okay, so what are the benefits of starting your ESG journey? I mean, there's a little bit of repetition here, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but basically it's to meet stakeholder expectations, whether it's your customers, whether it's the companies you're supplying to. Of course, you will gain a competitive advantage, particularly if you are exporting, and improve your brand value and your reputation, and of course reduce operating costs. I mean, normally when companies start doing this, they will start looking at areas which we refer to as low-hanging fruits. For example, energy saving. How do we do recycling? These kind of don't need a lot of effort, don't need a lot of investment, but can still reduce costs. Meet supply chain needs, obviously, and obtain sustainable finance, which we just looked at. Attract talent. Now, of course, if you look at today's generation, for example, millennials as well as Gen Z, normally they like to work for companies that are looking at these areas, that they're not just, in other words, purpose-driven companies, not companies that are just profit-driven, but purpose-driven companies as well. So when you implement ESG and so on, you will attract brighter and better talent, hopefully. And of course, as good corporate citizens, you can help the country achieve its sustainable development goals, because we've already signed up to the UN SDGs. Now, this is the ESG reporting landscape. I'm not going to go through this because the majority of this would apply to the big PLCs and so on, and we don't have so much time. But I just do want to point out the whole plethora of goals and frameworks and standards, and it's just a minefield for anybody starting on this journey. And that's why you probably need training and you probably need some sort of professional help. But I will point out there in red, the Companies Act 2016 in Malaysia does apply to all companies, including unlisted and listed companies. And section 213 in there says that directors must act in the best interests of the company. So the best interests of the company will involve thinking about the risks and opportunities that the company is facing. And there are ESG risks, there are ESG opportunities. So this is something you need to consider. I just put this slide in because I wanted to point out that many companies are already looking at ESG matters. So, you know, we have many laws in Malaysia dealing with different areas. So, for example, looking at labor and management relations and indigenous rights and so on. Standards, but want to use certain parts of standards or there's some repetition here as well, but it helps the directors to set certain standards and exclude other ones. Okay, so it really provides a framework with specific standards to follow for your sustainability reporting. Okay, what are the benefits of sustainability reporting? There's some repetition here as well, but it helps the directors to set vision and strategy and, you know, look at areas such as risk and opportunities and measure not just financial but non-financial performance as well and motivate employees. And of course, external benefits is all about building reputation, your brand value, trust, attracting finance, engaging with those who are interested, the stakeholders in the company. And of course, if there is any regulation for MSCs in the future, help you to comply with those regulations. In terms of facts and figures for the GRI, the thing is the standards cover all 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. Are free to use. You can get them online. And as I said, SMEs can use with reference to. They don't have to do all the standards in one shot. It's a very flexible and modular system, okay? And the standards are always updated. We just updated the standards in 2021. And you can see here at the bottom, it's referenced by 64 stock exchanges. In fact, if you go into the Bursa's sustainability guide, you will see that GRI is mentioned many times. And it's used by 78% of the G250, the Global 250, and 68% of the N100 companies, according to KPMG's recent. So it's one of the most pervasive set of standards. In fact, there is no other set of standards. EFRAG in Europe are coming up with standards. They're only in exposure draft form, as well as the ISB, but they're only in exposure draft form. And GRI has been around, as you can see here, for 25 years, so very well established. So what are the next steps for you? I would say that you should understand and learn, because I noticed like 50 to 57% of you know nothing about this area. So you would consider asking your BOD or senior management to come and attend our GRI discovery training, decide who will lead the sustainability agenda within your organization, you know, identify, you know, sustainability champions, I would call them, people who are going to drive this. Then, of course, make sure there's training for those people. And then, of course, you should think about how are you going to start your sustainability reporting. Make sure you determine what's the reporting period, what data are you going to collect. You may use Bursa's 11 common sustainability matters to, you know, to give you some reference. And what are your deadlines? And then, of course, embark on your journey. And if you need professional help, then reach out to some people like us. Now, I just want to briefly go over the kind of training that we do. Okay, so you can see here our one-day discovery awareness training program. Now, this is for, you know, board members, senior management, you know, regulators, government officials, and so on. People who don't want to go into the nitty-gritty and the nuts and bolts of sustainability and sustainability reporting, but they want to have an overview of what it's all about, looking at what are the terms, the definitions, the standards, the reporting framework, and so on. And we normally will have this for, you know, maybe around 20 people, because we don't like to have, we want to have 1,600 per head, and we can tailor this program. So certified sustainability professional program. This is the one where you become a sustainability professional. And you can see here, it's a 4-day training program. Reporting. And this also, I mean, anybody can go on this training, but it may be more for those who really want to get into this area. So after you would go through a program like this, you'll be able to have a much better understanding of what sustainability is about, what sustainability reporting is about, and you should be able to hit the ground running and start to be able to identify in your own organization, identify what the material impacts are and what the most significant are for your company, and how to manage the whole sustainability reporting process in accordance with the GRI standards, and you know how to find the data and the information and so on. So this really gives you the nuts and bolts of how to start this process in your organization. And as you can see here, it costs 7,700. Now you can do this program online directly with GRI Academy, and it will be slightly cheaper. Sorry, I can't think off the top of my head how much it is. I think it's in euro. But one of the benefits of doing, and I will tell you this from personal experience, because I'm doing it online, and quite frankly, you have to be very disciplined, and there's no interaction. It's just you and the computer screen. So if you're the kind of person who wants to get the training done and dusted and in a block of time, then it's better to do this face to face. And some of the benefits of doing that is you're going to have interaction with the facilitators in the classroom, and you can network with other people who are in the course. They may be from the same industry, they may be from different industries, but you can share the real life sustainability related issues. We also provide all the training materials, plus we give you an exam question bank so that you can practice for your exam, because at the end of the 4 modules, you have to do an online examination. It's multiple choice, but you're not allowed to access any materials. They have a program to watch your eye movement and so on. So you can't access anything on the web or on hard copy materials or anything. So you really need to have to gone through and revise through this stuff. So we will help you with that. We will do 2 hours exam prep for you. And then we will also have 5 hours of discussion and advisory for your business within 2 months of completing the course. This is 2 months of finishing those 4 modules, not finishing the exam, finishing the 4 modules. So I think it's time for many of you, those of you who haven't done this, to start the sustainability journey. And I just have photographs here of myself and Q&A if anybody has any comments or wants to ask any questions. So I'm just going to exit from this and go back to our first slide, and then we'll go into the Q&A. Pratap, can I hand it over to you? Have you been answering questions?
Yeah, Pratap, maybe I just basically tell the question and then you can answer. So
Okay.
the first question is from Mr. Sugu. Will certified sustainability professional training allow someone in the ESG consultancy field to prepare the report for listed companies?
Yeah, hi.
Yes. Yeah, okay.
Good morning, and
good morning.
Good morning, Kay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for the wonderful presentation, Kay. It's quite interesting to see some of the information that you shared just now. Thank you, Mr. Sugu, for the question. The question is whether the certification professional training allows someone in the ESG to prepare a report for listed companies. I mean, just to answer the question, it's an emphatic yes. Certainly, you'll be better equipped to actually prepare a sustainability report for PLCs and even for non-PLCs and so on. You will understand various concepts that are used and terminologies that are used to prepare the sustainability reporting. Yes.
Any more questions?
If you don't want to type in the chat, then you can just put on your mic and ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like to also add the fact that the Discovery Awareness Program is HRDC claimable. If you are contributing to HRDC, I think most companies right now are required to contribute. So you can actually attend the program using your HRDC funds that are within HRDC. The GRI certification program is in the process of getting approval from HRDC. So once they have approved, which actually have sort of like have started on sustainability in terms of requirements for various states in the in Malaysia, and we are actually populating the data and also creating. And I think that could be completed within a week or two, and we'll be more ready to share. But just to answer your question, in Malaysia, some states are a lot more advanced in terms of sustainability requirements. Other states seems to be lagging behind. Clearly, Penang, Selangor seems to be a lot more concerned. I'm not sure about Johor. And do you have any information about Johor?
Yeah, Johor has their own sustainable development report, so they're one of the better ones, I would say. Yeah, in terms, so they are looking at this area in terms of, you know, governance, economic development, housing, human capital, and so on. So they have come up with a report in 2020 looking at aligning to the UN SDGs. But how far down onto the ground that is going, that's still open. In fact, there is a website, maybe I'll put it in the chat box, let me find it first, that actually gives feedback or indicators on the different states. It's set up by an organization. I'll put that in, and then you can have a look. But I think Johor, Penang, Selangor, they're all doing relatively well. Yeah.
Yep.
Pratap, there's another question. Bursa's reporting follows TCFD. Yours is GRI. What's the difference?
Excellent question, Inche Anwar. I mean, thank you for asking that question. I was hoping that someone would. Just to let you all know, just give you a little bit of background here. Bursa amended the sustainability requirements last September, 26 September 2022. And what they've done under the new sustainability reporting requirements is that they have added 4 new additional criteria. I mean, I'd rather say 4 new key themes for them to report on. And one of them is to use TCFD. TCFD stands for Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. So Bursa has required companies to report on TCFD. And prior to that, Bursa actually stated under the listing requirement 6.4 that if companies were to report using GRI, they do not need to comply to Bursa's requirements in sense of sustainability reporting. But now they have amended it, so they now require companies to report on TCFD. So what is the difference between GRI and TCFD? That's a very important question. To say it very bluntly, TCFD is very much climate-related sustainability disclosures. And GRI goes beyond climate-related. It has climate-related information and reporting as well, but it goes beyond that. I give you an example. TCFD has 4 core elements in it: 1, governance, strategy, risk, and also metrics and targets. And all of them will be related to climate-related kind of disclosures. GRI has a lot more extensive reporting disclosures, which also includes matters related to human rights, labor information, and various other social greenhouse gases. That is our government's target according to the 12 Malaysian plan. And we know we got only at about, now it's 2023, we've got about 7 years to hit 45% reduction in GHG. So climate related kind of impacts are getting very, very serious. I mean, looked at seriously by the government. And it's not just an issue for the government, but also for the entire world, because we all want to put a lid on the carbon emissions. So that has become very critical. So you can understand that from Bursa and also the rest of the country as well, we all need to start measuring our carbon footprint. But that alone will not be able to help you in terms of sustainability reporting, because you still not, you may sustainability standards worldwide. 4 out of 5 global 250 largest organizations use GRI. And one of the reasons is that GRI is freely downloadable from the website. You can go to GRI's website, you can download all their material topics, their standards and the requirements, their guidance, the tools. It's all available from GRI's website. But for the uninitiated, you might find it to be quite challenging to actually go through the entire process and so on. That's why we are here to assist you by training you and providing advisory support to, in terms of sustainability reporting.
Could I add one other thing?
I hope that answers your question, Chanwa. Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Sorry, yeah. I mean, when you're talking about TCFD and GRI, one of the key things is the audience for GRI is a very wide range of stakeholders. It satisfies a wide range of stakeholder needs. Whereas if you look at TCFD, it's very much for investors, and it's very much basically looking at financial risks and opportunities and disclosures. Rather, GRI, as Pratap just pointed out, covers environmental, social governance in detail and covers a wide range of interest. And I think, I don't know whether you're familiar, but there's this whole issue around the concept of materiality. TCFD looks at financial materiality, not non-financial, whereas GRI is covering both. It's covering a double materiality concept. So it really is much wider in terms of its scope and in terms of its usefulness, I would say.
Yeah,
And
there's
I'd
an
just like to
interesting.
add that GRI is fully aligned with TCFD disclosures.
Exactly.
So if you use GRI, you'll be aligned to TCFD requirements. So and not only that, globally, between all the standards and frameworks, there's a lot of discussions going on around to align them together. Right now, in Europe, they are, following COP26 in 2022, they set up the ISSB, International Sustainability Standards Board, and they are looking into coming out with a more consolidated kind of approach to look at sustainability reporting. But like Ann said as well, the ISB also looks at single materiality. They don't look at, they have decided to use single materiality compared with GRI's double materiality approach.
There's an interesting question from Mr. Anwar. How does your company help in the metrics, i.e. software system?
Yeah, we don't have a software at the moment, but there are a lot of available GRI software services available out there. So again, if you go to GRI's website, there are a lot of software players out there who will be able to provide those kind of services. At the moment, yes, we don't have a software system to help. Whether it's a requirement to do a sustainability reporting using a software is something that we can possibly discuss. But actually, a lot of companies are already doing sustainability reporting without using any software. You can actually do it without the software.
He's asking, are the software players local?
There are a lot of software players who are international. There are a few local companies as well, which we are engaging with, because we do have plans to develop our own software. At this moment, actually, we are actually in discussions with our technology developer to develop our own software, but it'll probably take some time before we are able to release that software. Yeah, there are some local players and as well as regional and global players.
Perhaps we should point out, Path, that we've looked at some of these and that a lot of them are still relying on Excel spreadsheets.
Sorry, and I don't know, the audio sort of like
okay, I'm
wasn't
just
very clear just now.
Maybe we could share.
You've gone very soft, Ann.
Yeah.
Okay, something has happened with my audio.
Yeah,
Hold
now
on
we
a
can
second.
hear you.
Yeah,
now
yeah,
we
we've
can
sat in on many demos and we've noticed that many of them use Excel spreadsheets. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so the thing is, a lot of companies are also using their own Excel spreadsheets to do sustainability reporting, which is well and good, depending on the size of the company. So if you subsidiaries, paying for the software can be data capture and sustainability reporting.
There's one more question from Mr. Anwar. How do you cater for scope 3?
I'm not sure whether I fully understand the question in terms of catering, but of course, this is a reporting mechanism, is a disclosure for companies to report your scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. So GRI actually has its own what they call topic standard in terms of carbon emissions. So the reporting organization is the one who would be actually disclosing their scope 1, 2, and 3. So there are a lot of guidelines that are available in terms of reporting and so on, which you can actually read about it from GRI's website.
So there's a question to me. So from Mr. Don, does StartIX also focuses on ecosystem building for sustainability practitioner in Johor? Yes, thank you for the question. That is the journey that we shall take soon. So we will move towards digital and sustainability. We'll bring in the players in, and then we also will run startup development program together with corporates looking into this area as well. Thank you for asking. Maybe you can reach out to me because we will have a physical place at Menara Jayland to do our initiatives and programs.
Yeah.
So
That's very
one
nice.
more,
Good,
yeah.
good. That's a very nice initiative, Kay. I hope you'll be able to actually sort of like and ecosystem building in Johor.
Yes, thank you. So
And
one last question. Oh, sorry.
yeah, go ahead,
Pratap?
go ahead, Kay.
No, it's okay.
No,
It's
I just
okay.
want to mention that at the last count, when I looked into GRI's website, there are less than 20 certified sustainability professionals, GRI certified sustainability professionals in Malaysia. Some countries in the world, they only have one or two, some have three, four. Some countries in Europe has got about 30 or 40. And here's where I think Malaysia can possibly sort of like pull away from the pack and really take on the path of sustainability reporting by getting as many people certified to do sustainability reporting. As you know, this year is going to be crucial in Europe, especially in European Union, because they are discussing on introducing a lot of regulations and new guidelines in terms of carbon emissions and sustainability reporting. As Anne mentioned earlier, some Malaysian companies have also attracted the eye of the Western countries as well in terms of some of our products and services which has been banned or stopped or being queried in terms of sustainable practices and so on. And this is going to get even more difficult this year when the European Sustainability in October this year. And then there is also this carbon border adjustment mechanism that's going to be introduced this year as well. So if any European companies are doing business with Malaysian companies, they will be forced to report and will need to evaluate whether Malaysian companies are compliant in terms of the new standards, new requirements, and so on. So eventually it will affect practices if we want to sustain and grow our own businesses in Malaysia and also externally.
Okay. One last question before we show, our training program. Upcoming is the discovery training. Any more questions from the here? There's the QR code if you're interested, and this is HRDC claimable. Conducting this physically in Johor. The tentative date is 2nd February, but if we need to basically keep to the number of packs, the end date may be towards mid of February, but our target is 2nd Feb if we can get the number of packs. So it, like what I mentioned again, it's HRDC claimable. So the next training is the GRI certification. Hold on. Which is like what Mr. Pratap said, that is 7,700. I think Pratap, you are also looking at this as potentially HRDC claimable in the future, right?
Yeah, it is in the works. So we are actually in discussions with HRDC. We're coming out with a special. Hopefully, I don't want to announce it or let the cat out of the bag, but hopefully, we'll get some kind of innovative package to allow companies to get to send one or two of their staff for certification purposes. Not every company would want to send their employees to be a certified sustainability professional. You probably just want to get one or two staff, depending on the size of your company so that they'll be better equipped and they'll be certified in terms of sustainability reporting.
Okay, I think we are coming to an end. So what we'll do is we'll put on everyone's camera so we can take a photo, and then I guess it will be the end of our online preview. Thank you so much for spending time this morning. We really appreciate it. And, you know, we hope that there'll be more people joining into our program. Of course, you know, we would like to start on physical trainings after the COVID. So just to let you all know, we will reach out to you individually to see whether you'll be interested to participate.
I can see some of my friends here. Encik Shairul, hi, good morning.
Hi, Mr. Sugu. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Take care and have a great week ahead and a happy Chinese New Year.
Happy holiday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.